Thank you for listening to my presentation. I am Vanessa Marcella from the University of Calabria, Italy. Today I will present my study titled Cringe Humor in Television Comedy, a Multi-Corpus Replication Study. Let me begin with a brief overview of the presentation. First, I will introduce the concept of cringe humor and clarify how it has been defined in recent scholarship, particularly in relation to secondhand embarrassment and emotional ambivalence. Second, I will briefly summarize Attardo's 2023 study, which serves as a theoretical and methodological starting point for my research. Third, I will explain how I designed a replication study, including corpus compilation, annotation procedures, and analytical tools. I will then present the main findings, focusing on significant strings, keyword analysis, and sentiment analysis, and I will compare the cringe and non-cringe corpora. Finally, I will conclude by discussing what these results suggest about the emotional structure of cringe humor and its role in contemporary television comedy. Well, to start with, cringe humor refers to a form of comedy characterized by the audience experience of secondhand embarrassment directed at one or more participants in a humorous situation. Importantly, it involves a blended affective state in which mirth co-occurs with embarrassment, and in other words, viewers laugh while simultaneously feeling discomfort. This paradoxical emotional experience has attracted increasing scholarly attention, particularly in the context of contemporary television and online audiences. The research builds on Attardo's 2023 study, which analyzed YouTube comments responding to the Office episode Scott's Tots, an episode widely regarded as a prime example of cringe humor. The original study employed significant string analysis, sentiment analysis, and a comparative perspective with Friends, the TV series. The findings suggested that audience reactions reflected a mixture of embarrassment and amusement, supporting the idea that cringe humor operates through emotional ambivalence. Well, let's now focus on the replication. My study aims to replicate and extend these findings using a broader multi-corpus approach rather than focusing on a single episode, and I compiled larger corpora across 3 television series and compared cringe and non-cringe content. The goal was to test whether the emotional linguistic patterns identified in the original study remain consistent across a wider data set. First step was the selection of the TV series to compile the corpora, and for the cringe corpus, the Peep show with 328 YouTube comments was considered, along with And Just Like That with 1,242 comments, and The Big Bang Theory with 4,194 comments. The Peep show and Just Like That were selected as prototypical examples of cringe humor, as both systematically foreground social norm violations that invite strong viewer identification with embarrassed targets and produce an embodied, hard-to-watch response. The Big Bang Theory occupies an intermediate position, and it's treated as a hybrid or low-intensity cringe case. In fact, while the series includes frequent awkward interactions and social incompetence, embarrassment is often stylized, short-lived, and framed through superiority rather than vicarious identification. In contrast, the non-cringe corpus includes the Golden Girls, Grace and Frankie, and Will and Grace, and these were selected as non-cringe control series. In fact, although they address socially sensitive topics, their humor relies on irony, verbal wit, and laughter rather than sustained embarrassment. In total, for the cringe corpus, 5,764 comments were collected, and for the non-cringe, 6,906. Thus, the cringe corpus includes these three series and counts 117,588 tokens and almost 10,000 words. Each comment was manually annotated considering the year it was actually posted. It also each comment refers to the specific series and the number of the video to which it refers to. Overall, the comments range from 2012 to 2026. So the corpus was compiled on a sketch engine, and following Attardo's methodology, specific words and phrases were searched into the corpus, and so therefore we do have specific ones that refer to, let's say, what is considered cringe humor, and over here we have the results with in raw frequency numbers. So therefore, as highlighted in this slide, we can see that specific words were particularly frequent in some of the subcorpora. As for the word cringe, that is 83 times frequent in and just like that, and 147 times in the Big Bang Theory. We can also see that the word embarrassment is only present in the subcorpus and just like that, while the word awkward is 242 times present in the Big Bang Theory. However, these are frequencies in raw numbers, and given the different sizes of the subcorpora, it was necessary to normalize these frequencies. Thus, focusing on the word cringe and analyzing its frequency in per million words, we can say that it's actually mostly frequent in and just like that corpus, subcorpus, with a frequency of 3097. This means that it's actually more frequent in just like that than in the Big Bang Theory, although the raw frequency number is higher. The same procedure was carried out using a different set of strings of specific words related to humor, as we can see here, and the numbers are reported in raw frequency. However, the normalized frequency also gives us an idea that YouTube commenters on Peep Show employ proportionally more explicit digital laugher markers than commenters on the other two series, while other words such as funny and laugh are more present in the Big Bang Theory subcorpus. Further step was the keywords extraction, always through Sketch Engine, using a reference corpus, so it is the English Web 2021. And over here we have the first 15 items ranked by the keyness score, which is based on the simple maths that identifies the items that are typical of the corpus, and let's say it identifies the DNA of the corpus, and the first word is cringe followed by unfunny. We also have other words that were not part of the set of strings to define cringe, such as laugh track, sitcom, but also nerd. We can also observe there is a word that is actually misspelled, but however, it's been taken into consideration given its frequency. Now let's look into the non-cringe corpus, which consists of the three series selected as control data set compared to the non-cringe, to the cringe corpus for a contrastive analysis. And this one has slightly more comments, and it counts almost 121,000 tokens and 10,660 words. In this case, the comments were published sometime later compared to the cringe comments. That is actually from 2016 to 2026 compared to the other one that was 2012 to 2026. Same procedure was carried out with the non-cringe corpus. So the same set of strings that relate to cringe humor were searched into that corpus, and as we can see, there is actually a very low presence of these specific items. For instance, cringe only occurs 2 times compared to the 236 times of the cringe corpus. The same is for embarrassing, painful, and torture, although painful and torture actually refer to something that happened in that episode of the show and not to an emotional state of the viewer. And awkward actually appeared 5 times, only 5 times, compared to 247 times in the cringe corpus. The same thing happened with, was done with the strings related to humor. However, we cannot really identify a huge difference between the 2 corpora. There are some items that are more frequent in the non-cringe corpus, such as lol, or the word hilarious, but still, if we look at the word laugh, that is more frequent in the cringe corpus. So already from this kind of comparison, we can actually identify specific differences. In fact, the cringe comments show more frequent references to discomfort. So when we looked at the cringe significant strings, and also stronger affective polarization. In contrast, non-cringe comments display more straightforward positive humor markers without the same degree of ambivalence. So this is the main difference that already arises comparing the 2 corpora with the detection of these specific strings. Look into the sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis was carried out using the software Luke, which enables to calculate the positive and negative tone, so the general emotional tone within a text. This means that in the cringe corpus, 5.9% of the words were tagged as positive, while 3.54% as negative. In the non-cringe corpus, we have a higher percentage of positive words, that is 6.61%, and a lower negative percentage of words, that is 1.76%. In addition, using the same metric adopted by Attardo, the emotional positivity index, or emotional tone, calculated as the difference between positive and negative tone scores, so in this case positive tone minus the negative tone, the results show that the emotional tone in the non-cringe corpus is approximately double that of the cringe corpus, and higher number indicate a more positive tone of the text. So yes, we can say that the positive tone is higher in the non-cringe corpus compared to the cringe one. However, due to some limitations of the software, which does not allow any manual tagging classification of positive, negative words in the corpus, the cringe corpus actually shows possibly a higher percentage of positive words in the text. In fact, on this slide, we have some examples that show how there might be a misleading annotation of a positivity and negativity. So this polarity can be misleading in the calculation of the percentage of the emotional tone. For instance, in the first example, we have so horrible, and horrible is tagged as negative. So woke, just not funny. In this case, funny is tagged as a positive word, but still it's supposed to be negative as it's saying that it is not funny. So instead of having unfunny. The same is in the second example. Cringeworthy is written in as a separate word, so cringe is negative and worthy is annotated, is tagged as a positive. And in the third example, if the point was to make the audience feel uncomfortable, mission accomplished. So this mission that it has been accomplished is actually with a negative purpose. So it cannot be considered as positive. And the last one, it's not funny, it's gross. So again, funny is tagged as a positive, which is not. This dual balance that we have is also represented in these other examples, which actually highlight this duality that we have in these examples, which reinforces the idea of cringe as a mix of emotions. So as we can see here, I don't know about anyone else, but it's actually somewhat funny and depressing. And this is so painfully unfunny that makes it funny. And I laugh only because this is insanely awkward. This is so stupid. I love it. So again, these are pure examples of the mix of mirth and embarrassment. The replication confirms Attardo's findings. Cringe humor is characterized by a blend of embarrassment and mirth, frequently co-occurring in audience responses, as we also saw in the examples. Sentiment and Luke analysis show a pattern of mixed emotional polarity, supporting the idea that cringe humor generates simultaneous negative and positive effect. In the cringe corpus, significant strings and keywords strongly reflect awkwardness, discomfort, and secondhand embarrassment alongside explicit markers of humor. So compared to the non-cringe corpus, cringe comments display higher emotional intensity and stronger affective ambivalence. Overall, the findings suggest that cringe humor functions as a complex affective experience where discomfort is not opposed to humor, but constitutive of it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions. And here we have some references.